It wasn't until I was 27, 7 years into sobriety, that I discovered Brainspotting as a client, and it changed my life. I mean, I did one session and I walked out of there and I was like, I just did 6 months worth of work in an hour. Like, where was this? All the times that I almost died and overdosing and getting arrested and all that stuff. It's important to me to offer avenues of healing that actually get to the root of the issue and do it in a way that is encompassing like the humanity of the person and really truly listening. And I feel like Brainspotting has given me that for my own life. And the way that we frame it really allows people to show up who they are. There aren't protocols, there's not expectations. We can adapt and attune things as we're going to make it work for just about anybody.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode.
Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Mariya Javed-Payne, and we're going to be talking about trauma, and specifically healing trauma, using a very powerful technique called Brainspotting. Mari talks about her own struggles with addiction and growing up in an environment with a lot of trauma. She was born in India and moved to Brazil and France all before the age of 7. And we discuss how that affected her. And she also talks about how ancestral trauma affects us all. So let's get started. Here she is, Mariya Payne. Welcome to the show, Mari, and I'm so happy to meet you. We met in a circuitous way via my sister, via her therapist of some type, and that therapist, who I never met, introduced me to you because we didn't want a conflict of interest.
That's right.
So now it's just two people that have never met that are going to talk about trauma, healing, all kinds of good stuff. So, hi, welcome to the show again.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So you were telling me before we started that trauma is your favorite topic. And how did that happen? How did that become your favorite topic? Some people, it's cooking. Some it's gardening. Some people just love trauma.
Yep. We're a rare breed, I would say. But being a trauma therapist and educator makes me feel like I'm able to offer something that's really actually happening to many of us around the world. So hopefully it's a pathway to offering healing to people.
Yeah. I mean, I just think being alive is kind of traumatic, period. If
Agreed.
You're any type of level of sensitivity, life can be very harsh. It's all sort of relative. I don't know if you raise your level of what you can handle by what's happened to you. Sometimes I think the people that have had the most trauma, they can handle the stuff that I can't because I haven't had as much. I don't know. I mean, I've handled everything because here I am, but I don't like to be traumatized, and who does? And what does that actually mean? Is it just, I mean, I'm highly annoyed most of the time, but that's not trauma.
It could be. I'd have to pick your brain.
Yeah, I think I'm just a brat.
Yeah. I would say capacity wise, though, I mean, I do have a very long trauma history and addiction history as well. We were chatting. I mentioned I've been sober for 14 years. And I think that was all the mud that eventually led me to being able to help other people through it. And then obviously the training and education gave me a means to be able to do that. So yeah, we are a rare breed. those of us who maybe have gone through some dark times and can liberate ourselves from it, which is lifelong work. That's why I'm here, I think.
Well, thank you for doing that, because there's a lot of people that need that kind of help. I think,
Mhm.
many people don't even realize that that's what's happened to them because they don't have a reference point, because they don't even have a baseline for what is a normal existence, if there is
Yeah.
such a thing. But, there people who have been certainly heavily traumatized in childhood
Hmm.
don't really know any different. So
Very
there may
true.
be some instinctual kinds of feelings like that didn't feel good, that didn't sit right with me, but it's day after day, so they just go, oh, that's what it is. I was talking
Yeah.
to somebody the other day who was saying how, and this is very common, that when they would come home, they would have to read, in this case, their mother. What mood is she in? Is it safe to go in the house? How do I need to act around this so I don't doesn't trigger anything? Is there nothing I can do? Is there something I can do? I feel relieved now that she's left. That's kind of an odd way to have to grow up, but it's very, very common. I've heard it from a number of people that, another friend of mine, he said when he used to come home, he would walk around the perimeter of his house and look in the window
Mm.
to see what his dad was doing. If
Yeah.
his dad was drinking, he knew he was probably, he would try to gauge how drunk he was. And so is he in a good mood? Or is he stomping around the house? Is he sullen? I have to be careful. So you're really walking around in basically a war zone.
Yeah, I think trauma is ubiquitous, like it is a part of life, but it's really also on a spectrum. And, you might start out looking at something like just stress responses, which all of us have, and it's a built-in part of our mammalian brain to respond to stress. But if you get higher and higher levels of stress, towards the mind and the body and the spirit, I would say that you're going to then potentially develop, symptoms of trauma, and it goes into a different category depending on the length, the severity, and the type, right? So but all of us are experiencing stress in our lives, and it's the same stress responses that then get stronger and develop into trauma symptoms.
I sort of feel like when those things happen, I describe it as well, I guess it's a startle response. You just feel afraid and tight. Like you're just, everything sort of clenches and you're kind of ready to either, fight or flight, really is what it feels like. And mostly it's flight.
Exactly. Yes.
So especially if you're little and you can't fight, as you just, you have to just get yourself small, and then, but inside you're churning and troubled. So all that sort of anger that you would probably like to let out, you can't. So gets internal, and then you just sort of feel frustrated is a light word for the feeling.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. So the first response often is bracing. So your muscles will stiffen to engage in a either flight or fight response. So that bracing and tightening that happens is one of the core reflexive moves that our body does to prepare for something like that, to help us get out of it. And we don't get to choose it either. It's reflexive. So our body decides very quickly in this situation, hey, I'm little, I'm with a parent, they're bigger than me, they feed me, I can't fight back. And so all of that, anger and rage that is natural to show up to protect oneself might not be able to be expressed, and then it actually gets turned inward, and that energy has to go somewhere. It gets stored, and then that's what creates cycles of addiction or other depression, anxiety, panic attacks.
The other part of it that's, we're talking about childhood trauma here for a second. Not only is the trauma coming from a parent in that situation, but you also love the parent because that's what you kind of have to do. So there's a confusion that is so pervasive. You're going, I love this person. I can't please them no matter what I do, is probably the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wounding me on a consistent basis. You don't know what you are. You
Yeah.
can't know what you are in that situation. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. I mean, it creates fragmentation. So we have to live from different parts of ourselves in different situations. And then creating the inability to trust or have relationships or sense of safety in the world. Those are all profound results of having childhood experiences like that. Absolutely. And um, I think when you have someone who was supposed to care for you, right? The hand that feeds you is the same hand that harms you. It really plays on the attachment pathways in the brain. So it changes the way that, when you are supposed to experience, some kind of positive or pleasurable kind of um, memory or experience, it's going to probably bring up pain too or fear. So it's complicated. And my whole job, right, every day when I work with people is to help tease that out and start to separate those pathways and clear the energy or the survival responses that are trapped so that people can go back into homeostasis. The good news is that we're born with a beautiful blueprint of what balance, openness, curiosity, joy, groundedness is like. Babies, animals, right? We see how open they are. And so the good news is that it is possible to heal. It is possible to rewire, and the brain is very neuroplastic. And if you give it the right ingredients, it knows how to heal.
That is the good news for anyone that's listening that's maybe
Yeah.
going through some really rough internal nonsense that has been installed.
Mm-hmm.
The one of the things that's comes up a lot when I talk about this with other guests I've had is that the part of the brain that's affected by trauma is not accessible in the way we would like it to be with talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the other modalities seem to work better. Is it the amygdala? Is that the part of the brain? I think that's what the name of it is.
It's
Uh,
one part of, one
yeah.
part of the midbrain. Mm-hmm.
So you work with something called Brainspotting, which I have not talked about on this show yet. I've done EMDR and ART. What is that? Because it has to do with rewiring rewiring the brain in some way, and the eyes are a part of it. So can you explain it without for somebody who doesn't know anything about it,
Sure.
how that might work?
Yeah, absolutely. So brain spotting is a brain and body based reprocessing therapy, and it's a modality that harnesses the power of our eyes. If you think of your eyes, they're actually an extension of your brain. Your optic nerve goes directly into the midbrain where the amygdala is. So the optic nerve is very close to the amygdala. Why, do we theorize that, that's how the function has been created? Well, our eyes are scanning constantly. Our brain is using our eyes to scan all the time. You're looking at me right now. You're getting a sense of, who I am. Is this person nice person, safe person, etc. Our midbrain is figuring this information out at a very rapid pace, way faster than our thinking brain. So the brain uses our eyes to scan the world around us and bring that information that's outside of us inside so that we can make sense of our environment. And in brain spotting, it was figured out that the brain actually also uses the eyes to scan for information inside of us, inside the brain. So let me give you an example. If you have ever daydreamed and you were staring off into space, where you were looking is where that information is held inside of the brain. So the brain was using your eyes and the movement and holding on that spot to be able to pull up the file, so to speak, of where that information or the neural networks that are there holding that information, so that you could pull it up and think about it. So essentially, all of us are brain spotting all the time. So it's really natural, actually, when people start to experience brain spotting therapy. What we've done in creating a modality is we've offered a container and a set of frames and processes that can actually help release trauma, release stress states, work with anxiety, depression, a lot of different mental health conditions, PTSD also specifically, but also going into more positive states as well. So brain spotting is used for creativity, for performance, sports performance, musicians, actresses, actors. So a lot of applications that can be utilized by the power of the eyes. It's also really profound for spirituality and meditation. I use it for that often. So part one is locating this eye position that's holding a memory or a charge of something that's happened. You don't have to have a memory of it necessarily, but it can be a felt sense. It can be a thought, an idea. And then what we do is, we're looking for how do we find that brain spot or that eye position. We pair it with something that you can find resonating in the body. Not everybody feels things in their bodies. So even if it's a thought or an idea, that works too. But if you were coming to my office, Bob, and decided to do a brain spotting session with me, you came in with a, issue that you're wanting to work on, I would, do the assessment and intake and everything. And then we'd sit down and I'd ask you to tell me about whatever it is that you want to focus on. And then I would ask you some questions such as, what are you noticing as you share that with me? What's happening inside of you, or how is it showing up? And maybe you'd say, oh, I feel kind of like a tightness in my chest, or you were describing, the bracing response earlier. So I would say, okay, let's have you notice that bracing response. Let's have you even activate it perhaps a little bit more if you're able to. And then there's a variety of ways that we can look for the brain spot. There's different techniques, but we use often a pointer that helps to guide your visual field and guide your eyes across the visual field. And we would go across your visual field with the pointer and have you keep noticing the sensations or however the experience is real to you in your life. And we would locate a spot where you feel like, oh my gosh, there's a resonance right there. Like it feels way more intense over on the side. And we would laser focus and find exactly where that spot is. And it's pretty surprising to a lot of folks that we're stimulating something in the deep brain. It doesn't make sense to the thinking brain, but we locate this brain spot. And then what we do is we invite the client to keep their eyes there and focus on that eye position while simultaneously focusing on the internal experience. So brain spotting starts out with, focusing and finding the spot. And then the reprocessing and rewiring happens when we hold the container and invite focused mindfulness on that felt sense experience. And often people will have different memories start to show up. They'll have different sensations or emotions. And there's a lot less talking oftentimes in brain spotting because we're trying to help you stay in the amygdala, in this midbrain area that does not have language. So the midbrain is kind of a place inside of us that's sort of outside of time and space. It's not linear in the way that our thinking brain is. And you were mentioning earlier that talk therapy doesn't get to some of this material because it's often subconscious and hidden away. We have beautiful powers of dissociation to protect us from, remembering things or living in the trauma all the time. So as a means to be able to function, our brain will actually like wall off or block us from thinking of those things. Yet it's still carrying an energetic or emotional weight inside of us and showing up as other symptoms. So when we invite this focused mindfulness, the brain finally gets to say, oh, there's that memory or there's that experience from 20 years ago that we didn't have the resources at the time to deal with. I was 5 years old or whatever. I didn't know how to do that then. And okay, in this present moment, it looks like I'm in a relatively safe environment. And here's this other individual that's attuned to me, that's creating an environment of empathy and compassion and witnessing and offering a co-regulated nervous system that allows that person's body to actually move through the stored or repressed or the charge of whatever it is that they went through. So the cool thing is that the brain starts to rewire itself. And the theory with brain spotting is that we are harnessing the self-healing capacity that all of our bodies have. If you think about it, if you get a cut on your leg, right, you usually don't have to do anything. It'll form a scab, it'll heal itself. How does that process happen? It happens because the brain is constantly scanning for, threat. It's scanning if there's a virus or bacteria, hormones, food coming into the body, pollutants, etc. And it's trying to keep us at balance all the time. Our bodies like to be in balance. So your brain's gonna, send some signals, and you'll have white blood cells and red blood cells, and you're gonna form a scab. It has the resources to do so. It'll take care of it on its own. With trauma, though, oftentimes we don't have the resources, and the resources might be an experience of safety, an experience of connection, having attunement, and having, attachment. And so a lot of traumas that happen because we didn't have, there's insult to injury. You had the trauma, but then you didn't have the people around you or the loved ones or people to connect with. Mental health is like a pretty taboo topic. Unfortunately, still, it's getting better. It's my whole purpose in life, is to keep destigmatizing it. But your body's not going to be able to move through those energies, survival energies, if it didn't have that experience. The reasons why I think brain spotting works is that when you find a brain spot, you're essentially signaling to the brain, here's this activation from this issue that happened, either in the past or present. It could even be a future issue. And you're allowing the brain to then hold and focus on those neural networks and start to open them, travel down them, and discharge. So think of like a snow plow, right? Like the brain starts to go down on the streets and it's plowing the snow, and the snow is really the activation, and it's moving it out of the body. So people will have different experiences of releasing, crying, shaking, having different emotions. Sometimes it's very autonomic, where the body moves in certain ways or completes responses that it didn't get to in the time of the trauma because it wasn't safe enough to do so. And we as clinicians allow that to happen and know how to look for what's going on and track and guide the person so that it stays tolerable for them, and when you come out the other side, it's really profound to not be carrying a backpack full of rocks.
Yeah.
Weighing down.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are the ways people discharge, but you said it. You kind of gave that. You said you used the word co-regulating. What did you mean by that?
Humans are herd mammals. Okay. So what I mean by that is that we, regulate our own nervous system when we become older and as adults, but mammals need other mammals to learn how to regulate our own internal environment emotionally. So babies do not have a fully developed nervous system, and that's why they need care, they need love, they need eye contact, they need warmth and compassion and touch. And if your caregivers are dysregulated, you're much more likely to have a dysregulated nervous system growing up, and then that turns into, other problems in the future. But on a neurobiological level, our brains bounce off of each other and communicate. Our brains and our bodies communicate. So if I all of a sudden went, blah, right, and freaked you out, your nervous system is going to get a little activated.
Yeah.
Because my nervous system is activated. And that's this really beautiful, capacity that mammals have to signal to each other, oh, there might be danger or there's safety. So we either got to run or fight, or it's okay, we can chill here right now. So it's this communication system that's built in and hardwired for us. And we were, back in the day, as tribal peoples or nomadic peoples, we needed that in the jungle, right? Or you're walking through the desert and your clan or tribe, and if you see a tiger or something like that, the whole group's going to get activated, and so they can run away. So it's a safety measure that's built in. That's awesome, and it's also not awesome if you had people around you that were dysregulated. It's going to impact your nervous system, especially from a young age. So co-regulation is moving through the attachment pathways in our brains and our bodies. So attachment is, the neurobiology of attachment is connection. It's the neurobiology of connection, and humans are social beings. So connection is very much, an emotional experience and all of that, but it's a physiological experience and helps us to feel safe. It also helps us develop our own identities. And, when you're young and your parents reflect back to you, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, you made such a great painting. This is nice. You start to learn that those are all elements of who you are. And you create an identity through that. Same thing if you heard really, nasty things told to you, you're going to have an image of who you are based on the things that you've heard. So, the power of attunement and attachment cannot be underestimated. And in Brainspotting, we value that above all things. Like we value humanity. We value being human with one another and with our clients above all things. It's not about the technique or the setup or the eye position. It's really, biology and humility and care. And translating that from a body level means that as the clinician, you have to uh, be regulated. You have to be able to hold the charge or intensity of what's showing up and remain grounded so that that person's nervous system is going to read yours and be able to sense the cues like it is okay for me to do this right now and be able to move through it. So I teach this, I'm a brain spotting trainer, and my most, potent thing that I try to offer and invite people into is do your own work, because you're not going to be able to hold space for anyone if you haven't done it for yourself. Dealing with trauma is not easy. You're going to have, because we co-regulate off each other, it's normal to be dysregulated when you hear awful things, right? Like you're being impacted.
Especially if you're compassionate,
Exactly.
you're going to feel it. I mean, it's, somebody tells you something, you're going to like, ugh. I mean, I would assume the long-term traumas of childhood would take longer to deal with than, let's say, somebody had a really messed up car accident or they're coming back from war. Maybe not. I don't know. Those sort of one or two incidences of trauma that are traumatic events, as opposed to a consistent, ongoing type of environment.
I agree with you. Yeah, single incident traumas are easier to treat. I don't know that many people who only have single incident traumas in life, but I get what you're saying. The more trauma incidents you've had or developmental experiences in childhood, think of like, a garden and you've got a bunch of dandelions, right? If you only have one or two dandelions, okay, you can pull them up. Maybe it'll take a few times to really get the root ball. You got a whole field of dandelions and you pull on, one of the roots, you're going to start pulling up all the other ones. So we have to, work with it differently. But the cool thing about brain spotting, and I'm a seeker, like I'm always looking for the newest, best type of work, things to offer people that are effective. That comes from my own history of suffering with addiction. I was institutionalized for 2.5 years. I went to rehab 8 times. I did not stay sober after 8 rehabs. I went to therapy from, age 13 to 20, and still we did talk therapy. And it wasn't until I was 27, 7 years into sobriety, that I discovered brain spotting as a client, and it changed my life. I mean, I did one session and I walked out of there and I was like, I just did 6 months worth of work in an hour. Like, where was this? All the times that I almost died and overdosing and getting arrested and all that stuff. It's important to me to offer avenues of healing that actually get to the root of the issue and do it in a way that is encompassing like the humanity of the person and really truly listening. And I feel like brain spotting has given me that for my own life. And the way that we frame it really allows people to show up who they are. There aren't protocols, there's not expectations. we can adapt and attune things as we're going to make it work for just about anybody. And that's the beauty of it, is that there isn't a control level even coming top down from the Brainspotting as an organization. David Grand, who's a really loving mentor to me and the founder of Brainspotting, has really kept Brainspotting and to be a modality that is accessible to most, if not all people.
Mm. So
My TED Talk.
Well, it was great. I think you need to do a TED Talk.
I would love to someday.
I don't know how people get to do those, but this should be one, I would think. Okay, I was going to ask you, you were talking about using it not just to overcome, traumatic histories,
mm-hmm.
but for creativity, spirituality, all these other positive kinds of pursuits.
Yeah.
Freeing up something. Maybe you're freeing up some blocks to creativity. Or can people do this by themselves at some point? I mean, you said you use it for your seeking your spiritual life. Do you do this by yourself? Or you also do this with a practitioner of some type? It seems like maybe you can hit a point in the practice or in the knowledge of what this is to use it on your own.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that. So yes, you can use it for creativity and expansion and positive states of being. As far as working and doing it by yourself, so if I would not recommend working on traumatic things by yourself. Once you maybe do some brain spotting with a clinician and figure out how it works, absolutely, a lot of people will just sort of naturally start to become aware of where they're looking and where their eyes go when they're thinking of something or pulling something up inside of themselves. But again, the co-regulation and attachment piece is really crucial to the healing of trauma. And I mean, I've tried processing some smaller kind of things in my life that were distressing, and it does work because I think I'm a pretty regulated person at this point in time, and I can kind of coach myself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're struggling, having a difficult time dealing with traumatic things in your life, I really want to recommend that you see somebody, because you can open up a lot of stuff and maybe not know what to do with it.
Yeah, sure.
However, one of the things that I have a lot of my clients do once they start seeing me is using different eye positions for those positive states and starting to strengthen the neural networks inside their brain, which then shows up, in their lives. And so a lot of times, some of the exercises I give is, 3 times a day for 30 seconds each. I want you to pause and I want you to notice where inside of you feel grounded in present time, or where you feel calm. And as you do that, I want you to notice, as you tune into the sensation of calm inside of you, where it is, what it feels like, what's the texture, the temperature, the shape, et cetera, those sensory questions. I want you to notice as you drop into that, where your eyes automatically go. And then just keep your eyes there for 30 seconds or go back to it however many times you need to throughout the day. But what you're starting to do is build up something called interoception, which is the ability to feel what's happening inside of you, right? Inside of ourselves. And it's a really great exercise because people, start to develop like, oh yeah, I'm, really agitated because I'm sitting in traffic right now and I'm going to be late for my meeting. Okay, let me pause here and notice, is there anywhere, even if, anything the size of a grain of sand that feels grounded or calm? And I'm going to just tune into that right now and move my eyes to that spot that helps me anchor into that. And as people do that, you can weather the storm, so to speak, and you can feel positive things, like tune into the positive. If you want to think of a state of being that makes you really happy, right? Like a memory that you've had or a state that you aspire to be in. Like, I want to be an Olympic gold medalist like Simone Biles. Right? I could visualize if I was an athlete and visualize myself making all of the movements correctly in my sport and the fine motor skills and going through each set and routine and finding a spot that connects to that experience of like getting the gold medal, right? I'm going to do it. I'm going to get pumped up and make it happen. You find an eye position to correlate with that. You're going to start training your brain to live in that state, and our thoughts create our reality. So you get the body involved in that and have it be real to the body, it's going to be much easier to then perform at that level. So we have specific, trainings that we even do for sports performance and working with creativity and expansion. And it's also a really powerful way to actually support people who are dealing with trauma, because often many of us don't know how to live in those positive states. One of the biggest parts of my healing still to this day, after 14 years of sobriety, is learning how to hold positive experiences, because it's really hard for me.
Well, you don't deserve them.
Oh yeah. I mean, the stories are old as heck, right? Like, who are you? Who do you think you are? And so I work with expansion states often, daily. You probably are noticing that I keep looking up as I'm talking to you. And that's because that's the spot where I feel the most connected to who I really am and my spirituality. And it's happening spontaneously as we talk. So it's like wired into my brain now to do that.
Well, I was thinking about this has been the case for me my whole life, but a lot when I was younger, that I would notice that I daydream and imagine quite a bit. And I can do it. It can even happen while I'm talking to somebody about something, just sort of factual or whatever, just, and then I'll start thinking about something and people will say to me, "Where are you? What are you doing? Are you listening?" I'm listening, but it's not as interesting as the shit I'm thinking right now. And imagining.
Were you doing it like 3 minutes ago? Because I noticed you looking to the side.
Maybe. I don't remember. It's not. I'm very interested in this. I may have been thinking about what I was going to ask you. I wasn't off on a trip anywhere.
You were brain spotting a little bit.
Maybe
pulling up that information.
But what I was going to say was I would. The thing is, when I see these things that you're talking about, this imagination stuff, I can't see what's going on around me. I go into like myopia to the 10th power. And it's a blur out there if I think about it, if I remember it. And I am very myopic. I mean, my eyes are not, I have myopia, like a lot of people do, but and I was wearing glasses at a very young age, which I'm not going to attribute it to that. I'm going to attribute it to doctors wanting to get kids into glasses as soon as possible so they can make some money, and scaring the parents. That's how I'm going to say it. But because I used to take them off and break them. When I was little, but then as I got older, I was more socialized. So somewhere around 10 years old, I started getting glasses again, and then I've had them my whole life. So, but that's what happens to me when I kind of daydream. I can see stuff like unbelievably clearly, and feel it, live it in my head, but then I'm not present either. So that's what's kind of it's an odd. And so I think I'm probably sort of intuitively doing something like what you're talking about, but I'm not really haven't mastered anything. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's why the frame is important, right? Because like we're all doing it all the time. We're looking around as we're thinking of things, or we, drop into deep thought. We're, our eyes are looking somewhere as our brain is looking somewhere inside of us for whatever it is that we're pulling up. So what you're talking about is this orienting reflex. That's essentially what brain spotting is harnessed, is the orienting reflex. And then, the reason it's different when you're doing it kind of spontaneously in your life is the frame that we create to create a process of healing around it. So if you go into daydreaming, if you wanted to, as long as you're not like driving or something like that, you could start asking yourself questions like, as I'm thinking about whatever it is and seeing all these images or memories coming up, what's happening in my body right now? Am I having sensations somewhere? How's my posture? What's kind of coming up in the sensory realm? And as you tune into that, you're going to start to see a flow. You're going to feel a flow start to happen where your brain starts to pull up more things and more things. And maybe you go through, a process of releasing some of those things or coming to a deeper understanding of whatever it is that you were thinking about.
What's always been of great interest to me to check out a reality as in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I really, I'm not a huge fan of just sort of, I mean, I am now, but for a long time I was like, this is just not good enough. It's not, it's not fun enough. It's not interesting enough. My thoughts are better than what's actually going on. I'm going to do that, or, I'm going to get loaded so I don't have to be in reality. I did a lot of that too. So
Mm-hmm.
and I would say that there was, not a big history of trauma, but or anything that I could really say that when I hear what some people have gone through, I'm like nothing. It's nothing. I'll
Mm-hmm.
just yeah, but it's just sort of the normal kind of family type upbringing. I think. I mean, I don't have any big stories of anything other than just um, these people aren't as interesting as I'd like them to be. That's about it. So I don't know if there's a level of sensitivity that different people have, or a different sort of genetic predisposition to wanting, a little bit more than what's being offered or what is being perceived as being offered. Uh, I don't know. I'm just getting a little personal here with myself, but
Yeah, I think it's a blend of things, Bob. Like it's, nature, nurture,
yeah,
personality, and our essence. It's all unique. And then I think, again, people might, and to the listeners, that are listening here today, you don't have to have what we call these big T traumas to not feel well or not or to, feel disconnected in life. It doesn't require just having big T traumas. I see people who um, have had quote unquote, decent families and still have addictions and have other things going on. There's a variety of reasons for why that can happen. And some of the biggest factors is like the level of connection, intimacy, openness in a family environment. How warm, how open were they to talking about feelings and emotions? Is there EQ there? And then you have to look at other environmental factors, biological factors, what's happening in the world, ancestral patterns and what's been passed down through a lineage. That's a huge part of the work I do as well. Is I don't just look at, one-on-one what's happening, but what are the patterns that have been passed down. And
yeah,
all families and all lineages have experienced difficult times. And if that's not resolved, it comes down into our epigenetics. So
yeah. That's really fascinating stuff when I think
it's
about
so fascinating.
my family history.
Mm-hmm.
I can only go back to my grandparents, but growing up as persecuted Jews in Russia and having to
Yeah,
flee and come on a ship at 17 years old across the ocean, never see their parents again. And I don't know
that's
what went on
traumatic.
before that. It's pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
I would
And it's,
imagine. I would imagine it would be just you couldn't even. Didn't talk to them much about that. I just talked to them about what it was like when they got here a little bit, but nothing. I
mm-hmm.
remember my grandfather telling me that he missed his mother, that he never saw her again after he was 17. He got on a boat, a
That's
ship or whatever.
devastating.
Yeah, and so and also the whole thing. If you look at the history of the Jewish people, it's persecution. So there's got to be some of that epigenetically there. I'm not going to sort of lean on that as an excuse for anything, but it's certainly there.
Yeah,
And it's in the DNA and it's in the history that gets passed down verbally or non-verbally.
absolutely. Yeah, there's research that's coming out and showing that it's evidence. So this really does happen. We are not separate from our ancestors as much as we might live in an individualistic society. our blood and bone comes from the people before us and holds the stories and the memories that they had. So
I was looking at your.
all trauma work is ancestral work, in my opinion.
Oh, okay. Now we're into something here. Okay,
Have to
okay.
have round two.
all tra- trauma work is ancestral work. Wow. Okay. So now you were born in India,
I was, yeah,
and then you went to Brazil, France, and then the United States, all before the age of 6.
correct.
What do you remember of that? And not necessarily, um, specific, awake kind of reality memories, but well, that plus, what was going on? What did you feel? What do you remember feeling? Now I won't charge you for this, by the way. This
You're
is free.
hired.
This is free.
I mean, you're pretty good, so
Well, I just,
we can hang.
I love finding out about people. I always have. I've
Yeah,
always loved that.
yeah.
I don't want to get paid for it. I just want to do it.
um, what I remember was that was chaos.
Mm.
And, to be 2 years old and leave our whole family in India. So it was my parents and my brother and I left India because of my mom's job and wanted to kind of come out of poverty and make a better life, for ourselves. We moved to Brazil or France first. And so, imagine leaving everything and picking up, two little kids and going to a brand new country and don't know how to speak the language and have to learn how to do all that. She's a neuroscientist, by the way. So I guess the apple didn't fall far.
Yeah.
But, and then 2 years later, we picked up again and went to Brazil. Same thing, got to learn everything all over again, totally different culture and language. And then one more time into the United States. So can kind of only imagine the stress that my parents were under.
Well, I'm sure you felt it. If it was there, you felt it. It was,
Yeah. And there's been a lot of dissociation from that too, as a mode of survival for me. So I also grew up very, very numb and dissociated. And, that's been a big part of my life is like coming back into feeling, which I am a very deep feeler. So I guess I have that either going for me or against me.
yeah,
But
sure.
that's a double-edged sword. But uh, it was a lot. And it really led to feeling severed from any place of belonging and connection, when you leave your family and your roots. And I imagined how hard it was for my parents to take a leap of faith like that and be, really poor and coming even to the United States really poor. My mom wasn't, where she is now, but we had the, apartments with the cockroaches and all that stuff.
Sure.
And,
And the language barrier and probably not being treated the same as people who were born
racism is
here.
a thing.
Yeah, I think that's
Yes.
the word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word. Hmm. Yeah,
More of
and
that than
impact of
we.
colonization too. Like India is the way that it is because of British colonization. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's been my most recent, exploration in the last few years is what is living in my DNA and why do I feel the kinds of things that I feel, the heaviness and intensity of things that I feel. And I think it's because I am in my family the person that is sort of the cycle breaker. So I have the attunement or connection, at least to the pain and the resilience of my ancestors who survived, starvation and abuse and violence during British colonization. And here we are, still unpacking it. Will be for the rest of my life.
Oh, those Brits from back then, maybe even now, who knows? It is in their DNA too to be conquerors and people that went across the world taking shit for themselves because I don't know, they're entitled to. I don't think so, but maybe they think so. Yeah, it's
It's
really odd stuff that, well, it's uncomfortable when you think about those kinds of things and the brutality that
It's
accompanied all
awful.
that.
Yeah, it's
It's ridiculous.
and as a collective, we're all dealing with the active there's still active participation in all of those things. And then there's a lot of unconscious remnants that are there that are passed down. So that's what I mean when I say all trauma work is ancestral work, because when horrible things happen in the community, wars, famines, all the things that are going on or have gone on, that trickle down effect goes into the family. It goes into the home. And then, the parents are different and they treat the children different. So, if you were to look at your own family history and some of the ancestral layers to where you come from, I think it would start to make sense why you are the way that you are, because all things impact all things. We're interrelated beings. So when you start to heal something like an addiction, or you start to heal something like depression or PTSD, you are healing things that have been transferred to you from hundreds of years ago. And so that's why I think it's really crucial for all of us to be doing this type of work,
There
in my
was
opinion.
a friend of mine on this. This is one of my favorite stories and it's short
Mm-hmm.
and good. I think
All
it's a
right,
good
let's
story.
hear it.
A friend of mine was in a rehab
Mm-hmm.
with a guy, uh, tattoos all over his body, big druggy. And as they were talking, in a group thing, he said that when he was a kid, his parents were Holocaust survivors. And they eventually made it to the United States, and his father used to wake up the family at 2 or 3 in the morning out of a dead sleep and time them and how fast they could pack to get out,
Yeah.
just in case it happened again. So
Mm-hmm.
he grew up with that, where that this would happen a couple times a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just on a surface level of, this is what you have to do. But I can only imagine what else was there ongoing. But he
Mm-hmm.
said when he heard the story, he's like, oh my God, it's just such a reaction to, obviously the worst trauma that you could experience is the Holocaust. But this direct sort of reaction to that, even in a country where, his parents still didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
The trauma was so pervasive and so brutal. And so he picked some of that up. I don't know what
Right.
else went on in there in that house or what else was going on with him, but he wound up, being a serious drug addict. And that was just one story.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't, it only takes a second to fuck up the Mona Lisa with a can of spray paint.
Apparently. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
But
title of the episode.
I like it. Let's do it.
And when you get to know people and, you can think of what they're like on the surface and when you
Mm-hmm.
meet them. But if you really get to know people, everyone's got pain and it's invisible until they tell you about it.
Yes. Yeah. This is why it's really important. You said at the beginning, oh, why do you talk about trauma, right? This is why, because it's happening all over everyone. It's a place where all of us actually probably have a lot more similarities than differences, right? And so, um, talking about it, bringing it out into the open and making it visible is part of a collective healing process for all of us.
Also, I was reading about emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they were talking about, people that have high emotional intelligence, is that they reveal. I did look off to the side because I was thinking. I wasn't
Uh-huh. Good.
daydreaming. See,
Good awareness. Yeah.
I got, yeah.
Yep, you're finding your brain spot that
I look
pulls
up
up.
to the left. That's where I look.
Yeah.
So one of the characteristics of those people is that they're very good at, and they're not trying to do this. They're just naturally people that are willing to share their vulnerability and their difficulties with people.
Yes.
And it makes those other people feel comfortable, and then they'll reveal it. And I'm always fascinated. That to me is almost like the barometer for how close I can get to somebody. Are they willing to do the same thing?
Yes.
Does that make me go a little further even? Then maybe they go further. Those are my best friends.
There's a
And
little
then
co-regulation happening right there.
yeah. And then there's the people that clam up and they what are you talking about? We don't, everything's fine. How are you doing? Fine. Everything's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and when I meet those kind of people, I don't believe them. I just don't believe it. I think either they, they might be relatively fine, but they might be way not fine. It's my new version of English, way not fine. They may be really, tamping down on some stuff that is so disturbing to them that they won't cross that line. And I get it if they don't trust me yet. That makes total sense.
Mhm.
But I think there's a lot of folks that go through life not willing or able to feel safe enough to do that.
Yeah, that's what we want to change. We want to bring safety into the world, and we do that by hopefully having an environment that can allow us to do that, but also creating safety on the inside when it's actually safe to do so. You'll then be able to do
Yeah.
that for yourself.
Well, you got to know when to let down the guard and not let down the guard, because
Yeah.
you got to be smart about it. Judicious. That's the word.
Yeah.
Obviously, you do some sessions using the internet, Zoom, or whatever. Do you
Correct.
are you would you like to tell the folks how to get a hold of you if they're interested, or maybe your client list is just so busy that you don't care, you just want to get the information out?
I actually have a waiting list of about 40 people right now.
Okay, so folks, leave her
I'm here to
alone.
give information.
Leave
You're
her
always
alone.
you're always welcome to reach out and connect though. And if there's clinicians out there that are, interested in learning about brain spotting, you don't have to be a mental health therapist to do brain spotting. You can offer any healing modality or be a coach or whatever it is that you do to be in service to people, because you can adapt brain spotting to the population and the scope of what you work with. But yeah, if you want to connect or learn more, you can check out my website. It's www.awakenconsultingservices.com. And if you sign up for the newsletter, we send you little bites about brain spotting every few days, and for a handful of newsletters, and see the events that we have going on.
Okay, so the information is there to be had.
Yeah.
So anyone can become a brain spotting practitioner, or do you need some previous credentials like an MSW or something like that?
You don't have to have a mental health license. You need to be doing something in the healing field. So I've trained people who are doctors, nurse practitioners, acupuncturists, massage therapists, etc.
So you got to have some letters after your name.
Not necessarily letters,
Okay.
but be doing something that is helping people heal.
Well, a wellness podcast would not qualify, I'm assuming.
I mean, I listen to you talk. You got the green check mark.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I seem regulated enough.
You seem pretty regulated, and you already knew kind of how to talk about trauma. So you probably know more than a lot of clinicians do. So.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I've always been fascinated with the human condition and what makes us tick and how we work and why are we here and where are we going?
Is a endlessly fascinating, terrifying ride.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with mysterious.
Mysterious.
Mysterious. I really don't want to operate out of fear anymore.
Yeah.
Even though it still happens. Yes, even I can be afraid.
Yes, it is the great mystery. And I think the human mind and what our capacity is actually so much more than what we think. Our potential and our our possibilities. And
Oh,
so,
absolutely. It's amazing sometimes what the things that happen, and the veil between this side and the other side,
mhm.
almost non-existent is what I'm starting to think.
These days it has very much felt that way.
Maybe the closer we inch toward the end, the more we kind of can peek into the other room. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're still young. I'm not.
I'm young, but I feel like a really old soul floating around here. So,
Do you feel that you've been here before in some way?
yes, for a long, long time.
Yeah,
I'm
me
hoping
too.
I can
Me
hoping
too.
I can wrap it up sometime in the near
Yeah, get it
future.
right and you won't have to come back and do it again.
Please.
So I remember my birth. Would you like to hear about that for a second?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
excited for your listeners too.
Yeah, I have mentioned it, I think once or twice over the last few years, but I thought this would be an appropriate thing. So here's what I remember, and I don't remember it as like, I'm coming out of my mom. I don't remember that. What
Hmm.
I remember was being in sort of a vast darkness, not a negative darkness, just dark,
Hmm.
and a very powerful energy pushing me from one place to the next.
Wow.
And this is the greatest part of it all. I
Okay.
was scared for a second, and then I realized something, and I had this huge internal laugh. And the thought was, "Oh yeah, this again."
Oh my God.
And I never told anybody about it because I
Wow.
couldn't, because I was a baby, but I remembered it. And then eventually I got a little bit older and it came back again in the memory of that moment.
Yeah.
And then when I got even, I don't remember the first time I told somebody about it. I was scared to do it because I thought, what are they going to think? But then I
Hmm.
was like, who cares what they think? But so I've shared it a number of times. Now, did that happen? I don't know what happened. I don't know. I can't prove anything. I can't really quantify it. But as far as I'm concerned, I had an experience of some kind that I remembered.
I
I'll
believe
just say, yeah, really cool.
really
Uh,
cool. Yeah.
but it wasn't at the time. It was just like, whoa. I mean, the rush of power from uh, whatever existence I was in to the one I became next was intense.
Wow. That's
But
profound.
but the
Yeah.
humor part was really kind of an interesting part. And then I became a stand-up comedian later in life, which kind of always intrigued me that I had that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. And I have clients when we do brain spotting, we end up back in pre-verbal and in utero and even going into, past lives and ancestral
Yeah.
stuff.
I've done several past life regressions. Um,
Hmm.
one through after a series of hypnotherapy sessions that I did.
Hmm.
She wouldn't do it. I wanted to do it earlier. She goes, "No, not yet. You're not. I don't want to do it yet." So we did it at the end. It's pretty great. And then I did it with somebody else many years later,
Hmm.
and that was a completely different experience. And um, I did two of them with him, and one of them I was a woman in this past life. Really interesting, and a woman who was living in Eastern Europe, caring for a husband who was ill
Wow.
and feeling what it was like to be, in that position, living in the woods in this place. There were soldiers around, and I was definitely a second class citizen, and I felt that sort of female second classness in this one, which was
Hmm.
pretty great. That I got to experience that
Hmm.
in a way that I mean, obviously I know about that intellectually, but I'm not a woman, so I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
I did during that.
Yeah. Felt sense.
Yeah. So you get to do some cool stuff when you experiment with these things. We're
Yeah.
seekers. We're adventurers.
Hey, I was still a junkie in other ways. Adventure junkie.
Oh yeah. Well, why not?
Yeah.
You get all the rush with none of the bad consequences.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why acting is such a great field for people. You experience all of life, none of the consequences.
Wow. That's so true.
Yeah. Well, you have a beautiful evening, and
Thanks, Bob. It was a
thank you for your
blast hanging
time.
out with you.
Yeah, you too. You too. And congrats on your great work and the 14 years of sobriety and all the people that you're helping. Keep it up. Keep up the
Yeah.
good work.
Thank you so much. Back at you. Keep on sharing and speaking.
All right, will do. Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. There's a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Mariya Payne for being on the show. If you want more information about Brainspotting and other trauma work, please go to her website, which is www.awakenconsultingservices.com. Have a great day. Thank you.